Amazing rescue revealed. Mother cat's inspiring plea saves a dying kitten's life in 48 hours. As Sarah stepped outside the clinic, the autumn leaves twirled like dancers, biting at her cheeks with the chilly wind. A long shift of bandaging wounds and comforting anxious pets had left her bone-tired. Her dreams of becoming a renowned veterinary caretaker felt like grains of sand slipping through her grip, straddling the expectations of her estranged father, and her passion for animal care felt like being caught in the gales of Maplewood. Every moment spent at work pushed her further from his ideals, each day a battle against the looming specter of his disappointment. Suddenly a heart-wrenching mew sliced through the evening air like a siren. Sarah turned sharply to find a quivering ball of gray fur crouched by the back door, its tiny frame trembling against the chill. Nearby, the mother cat stood sentinel, her eyes wide and desperate. A visceral tug gripped at Sarah's heart. In that instant, the weight of her father's expectations, the clutches of family obligation, faded into the background. This was not merely a kitten, it was an embodiment of the life she was desperate to save. Driven by instinct, Sarah scooped the fragile creature into her arms. The warmth of its tiny body against her chest ignited a fierce determination within her. She could not let this little life slip away, not when the mother's plaintive cries echoed the very conflict she felt. That night was spent under a dim lamp, surrounded by veterinary textbooks and hopeful research. The kitten, her kitten, transformed from a weight into a purpose. Yet outside her fervent world of fur and hope, murmurs about her crazy plan began to buzz in the clinic. Why waste time on an animal that won't live long? Her father's voice haunted her, cutting through the passion that fueled her late-night studies. Why couldn't he see the spirit within her that needed nurturing just as much as the ailing kitten? She was losing herself. The stakes had never been higher. She trembled at the thought of defying him, yet the fear of losing the essence of who she was clawed at her heart. How could she explain this dedication to her father, this passion that came at the expense of family? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the days dragged on, the fragile kitten's health took a dismal turn. Each ragged breath sent a jolt of fear through her, intertwining love with the agonizing pressure from her father to give up the pursuit. Would he truly have her abandon her dreams for the sake of family order? She was left standing on the precipice, teetering between the unconditional affection she felt towards the kitten and the suffocating dread of disappointing a man who had carved out her identity. In the middle of her silent turmoil, she realized one truth. The kitten represented more than just an animal. It was the manifestation of her fight against the very expectations that had stifled her spirit. With her father's face looming larger in her mind, anger and despair crystallized into a single shard of determination. She could almost hear the mother cat's wails reminding her to rise. It was time to confront her estranged father. But as she steeled herself for that confrontation, the kitten struggled in her hands, each breath an echo of her own fears. As it battled for life, the lines were blurred. Who would she be if she chose this fuzzy life over the one her father envisioned for her? She stood on the edge of an agonizing decision. Would she dare to dream? And at what cost? The sun barely peeked through a blanket of gray clouds as Sarah entered the clinic for another day of unpredictable chaos. The atmosphere inside was a cacophony of anxious meows and the low hum of fluorescent lights. Yet, her world had shifted. Every sound now reminded her of her own internal struggle, of the vibrant life she was trying to save. The kitten, her kitten, lay in a cozy makeshift bed nestled in a corner of the clinic, a poignant symbol of her fight against expectations and her desire to forge her own path. As colleagues buzzed around her, she felt distant, as if the walls between her and the rest of the world had thickened overnight. Each interaction weighed heavier with unspoken words. "You shouldn't take on so much," a fellow intern, Lisa, had said quietly the day before. You know how it will end. The skepticism draped itself over Sarah like a suffocating blanket, but she brushed it off, fueled by an insatiable need to prove them wrong, as much to them as to herself. In the quiet moments between appointments, she began taking notes, documenting every change in the kitten's behavior, every tiny ounce of improvement. There was a catharsis in the recording, a sense of control she desperately clawed for in the tempest of emotion swirling around her life. Her handwriting, usually neat and precise, became more frantic, reflecting not just the kitten's progress, but also her rising defiance against her father's narrow vision. Encouragement from the mother cat outside the clinic added layers to her resolve. She would often pause between shifts, watching the strong feline take care of her remaining brood. The way the mother nudged and cleaned her offspring illuminated to Sarah the essence of resilience, a raw instinct to survive against all odds. At that moment, she wondered if the same nurturing instinct lived within her, waiting to be released, waiting for her to find the courage to bottle it and use it to fuel her dreams. But with every brush of the kitten's soft fur, shadows loomed larger in her mind. Would her father truly disown her if she took a stand? The thought crackled like static in her brain, a nagging question that blurred the boundaries of confidence and fear. As these doubts morphed into an unbearable storm, she knew she needed clarity if she was to face him. The night fell heavy around her as she settled into a solitary corner with her textbooks and a cup of tea, her eyes drawn to her laptop screen. She began working on a presentation, visualizing ways to lay out her case for pursuing veterinary medicine beyond the confines of familial expectations. The slide titled, "My Vision," took shape, filled with snippets of research and plans for a potential future, one where she wouldn't just follow in her father's footsteps, but carve her own path, defined by compassion and understanding for the animals that had captured her heart. Suddenly, a cry from the back room broke her concentration. The kitten had awoken, and the sound of its weak mewing filled her with urgency. She rushed to its side, her heartbeat racing. This little creature was not just a responsibility. It was a testament to her burgeoning independence. Cradling the tiny life in her palm, she whispered convictions into its fragile ears. "You're not alone. You fight. We fight." In this moment, Sarah's resolve crystallized. She would confront her father, bursting through the invisible barrier between familial expectation and her own desire. As she peered into the kitten's eyes, she saw reflected back her own fears, hopes, and an unwavering spirit that demanded recognition. Yet the moment of determination was suddenly countered by anxiety. What if she failed? What if their confrontation shattered whatever tenuous bond remained? As dawn loomed on the horizon, she felt the weight of her decision. Could she weave together the threads of her dreams and her father's vision into something both could embrace? With the kitten's fragile warmth a constant presence in her heart, she stepped away from the dim light of her makeshift office, readying herself for the inevitable showdown. But just as she opened the clinic door, a message lit up her phone, freezing her in place. It was her father, requesting to meet. Sarah's pulse quickened. This was the moment she had been dreading, and yet yearning for. Would she dare step into the arena of conflict, ready to redefine who she was, or back down under pressure? Her breaths came shallow as the question hung thick in the air, propelling her forward into uncertainty. What would she choose? The fate of the kitten echoed in her mind as she braced for the confrontation that lay ahead. The clinic had never felt more like a battleground than it did that morning. Sarah's heart drummed in a rhythm of trepidation and determination as she approached the front desk, her father's message hanging thick in her mind. She inhaled deeply, catching a hint of antiseptic mixed with little paws and soft fur. The familiar smells both comforted and terrified her. Each one reminded her of the stakes, of the lives that depended on her and of her own need for affirmation. Her colleagues buzzed around her, but today the noise felt like a faint echo, distant from the electric pulse surging through her veins. As she prepped for her first case, her mind wandered back to the presentation she had started the night before. It wasn't just a presentation. It was a manifesto of her ambitions, a lifebuoy in a sea of familial expectations. The thought of her father standing before her stern and demanding loomed large. Would he even listen? Determined to face this encounter with clarity, she jotted down her key points onto a small notepad, clutching it like a talisman. My future, my choices, my passion. Each phrase rolled off her pen as a declaration of independence. But a nagging discomfort nagged at her, a shadow of doubt creeping uninvited into her resolve. What if they were hollow arguments, easily dismissed with a wave of her father's hand? Just as she was about to drown in uncertainty, an urgent meow pulled her back into the present. It was the kitten, now showing signs of progress, the tiny creature she had adopted as much for her own healing as for its survival. She rushed to observe its behavior, feeling a spark of hope ignite within her. The soft rise and fall of the kitten's chest comforted her, and she marveled at how, despite its frailty, it clung to life with a fierce determination. For a moment she allowed herself to focus solely on nurturing this small being, wiping its face clean and offering drops of nourishment. In doing so, she found herself embracing a sense of purpose, allowing the ambiance to merge into a newfound clarity. This was what she longed for, the dynamic, complex relationship between caretaker and recipient of care, which mirrored her aspirations. Suddenly, a memory surfaced. Her father, dismissive as he had been on so many occasions, would never comprehend the bond she shared with the kitten. "You do too much for too little," he would say, as if she were wasting her time instead of becoming the very best version of herself. With that unbidden recollection came a flicker of resolve. Sarah had never aimed to please him. She aimed to be fulfilled in her life's calling, and right now, that calling was tangible and purring in her hands. As the afternoon sun dimmed behind a curtain of clouds outside, Sarah sought refuge in her notebook, sketching a visual plan for her conversation with her father. She outlined her dreams, her passions, and her fears, readying her mind for that pivotal confrontation. No more would she be a passive vessel filled with someone else's expectations. Instead, she sought to become an architect of her own life. With each bullet point, a new realization hit her. It wasn't merely about arguing with her father. It was about discovering the strength within herself to stand firm in her beliefs. The kitten symbolized that courage. Its very fight for survival mirrored her own struggle against societal confines. She heard a sound, a push at the door. It wouldn't be long now. Her father could walk in any moment, and all of her carefully laid plans could either implode or ignite a breakthrough. Was she prepared for that? Would she emerge with newfound confidence, or retreat into her shell, caving under the weight of his expectations? As the door swung open and the familiar figure appeared silhouetted against the fading light, the question in Sarah's mind crystallized. Was she truly ready to fight for herself? The moment of truth was upon her, and the decision she made next would alter the course of her life forever. In that charged atmosphere, she felt the kitten stir in her pocket, whispering to her heart that she was not alone. This was only the beginning of their shared journey, but what would happen next? Sarah's pulse raced, anticipating the dialogue that could reshape both their destinies. The moment her father walked in, the air thickened, charged with unspoken tension. His eyes, sharp and critical, swept over the clinic with practiced disdain before landing on Sarah. She stood frozen, no longer an intern caught in the throes of work, but a daughter bracing for a confrontation that could redefine everything. The kitten nestled deeper into her pocket, igniting a flicker of warmth in her chest. "Are you still playing around with those animals?" he asked, his voice a whip that cut through the ambient noise. Sarah clenched her fists, the words sparking her defiance. "They're not just animals, they're lives." She started, but her voice wavered slightly, a crack betraying her resolve. Instead of shame, she felt anger begin to swell. "Life isn't a game, Sarah. You have to be serious about this," he replied dismissively, leaning over the front desk to glance at the cases lined up for the day. "I'm serious. This is my passion," she persisted, surprising herself with the fierceness of her tone. Her fingers brushed the notepad in her pocket, its weight grounding her resolve. "Passion?" he scoffed, shaking his head as if she had spoken nonsense. "And how do you expect to make a living with that?" The words were like jabs, each one testing her fragile equilibrium. For years, she had swallowed his opinions, letting them mold her ambitions into shadows. But something shifted in her. As the kitten squirmed, its tiny breath reassuring, Sarah found the courage she had nurtured through her gentle acts of compassion. "I plan to integrate my passion with my veterinary skills," she said, her voice steadier, clearer. "What you don't understand is that empathy and skills can coexist. People connect with me because they see that care, that commitment." His brows furrowed, the confusion evident on his features. "Care alone won't pay for your rent. You're wasting time here instead of pursuing something meaningful." His words clawed at her, and for a moment Sarah's thoughts raced. Could she ever convince him? But before panic could set in, she pushed those feelings aside. This was not merely about earning a living. It was about identity, about stepping into her own. "I know I can make a difference, just like I made a difference with this kitten." She gestured past him to the small animal sheltering in her pocket, its presence as undeniable as her conviction. "If I can save lives there, it matters, Dad. It's meaningful to me." For a heartbeat, her father's steely demeanor faltered. A glimmer of uncertainty crossed his face, but it was gone almost as quickly as it had come. He straightened, adopting his practiced solemnity like armor. "The world doesn't work that way, Sarah. You need to wake up to reality." Reality. The word collided with her hopes. Sarah took in a breath, her heart pounding in her ears. She was not merely battling her father's ambitions for her life. She was wrestling with her own desires and the reluctance to step out fully into them. What if she wasn't ready? The kitten meowed softly, a reminder of her own journey, and Sarah couldn't help but think of the countless moments she had spent caring for those in need. "I don't want to wake up, Dad. I want to live. I can't find fulfillment in a life that isn't mine." Silence permeated the air, thick as molasses, heavy with expectations neither could shake off completely. The realization surged within her. She might not be trying to dismantle his worldview, but building her own, piece by tireless piece. "What will it take for you to see my side?" she finally asked, frustration mixing with desperation. "Because I am going to prove to you my way is valid." "Nothing will change my view," he shot back, but there was an underlying tremor in his voice. For the first time, his certainty felt like it had cracks. Determined to hold her ground, Sarah decided it was time to take a leap, to strive for an understanding that transcended their differences. In that moment, with the kitten's heartbeat syncing with her own, she saw not just an opportunity to stand her ground, but a gateway to embark on a path of self-discovery. "Let's make a deal," she offered, surprising herself with her boldness. "Give me a chance. Let me show you my world, and if I fail, I'll find something else. In the meantime, if you truly care about me, let me find my own way." He hesitated, weighing the implications of her offer against the fierce determination in her eyes. His silence felt like an eternity, and Sarah's heart raced with the possibility of change, however fragile it seemed. Yet as he opened his mouth to respond, uncertainty churned within her. What was she really asking for? Was she prepared for the full weight of her own ambitions, with the reality that they might diverge even further from what he envisioned for her? With all these thoughts swirling in her mind, she felt the stirring of something profound beginning to take shape. What would this agreement with her father reveal not just about him, but about her journey? "All right," he finally said, his voice measured. "I'll consider it, but understand that I expect results. You won't find it easy." And just like that, the stakes shifted. With the kitten nestled tightly against her heart, Sarah understood that this was no longer just about standing against her father's wishes. It was about actively carving out her vision of success, one nurturing moment at a time. As he turned to leave, the door swinging shut, another question arose. Would she have the strength and resilience to navigate the complications of this newfound agreement and remain true to herself? The uncertainty loomed large, yet Sarah felt an ember of hope flickering inside her. What would the next steps look like on this path of self-discovery, and how would she embrace her evolving identity as both a veterinary professional and a passionate caretaker? With her father's departure still echoing in the clinic, Sarah felt the weight of his expectations pressing heavily on her shoulders. She glanced around the room, the once familiar surroundings now feeling like a battleground. Every decoration, every tool, seemed to observe her with scrutiny. Taking a deep breath, she turned her focus to the small kitten curled up in her pocket, its tiny existence embodying everything she stood for. The first day of her newly defined journey began with a mixture of determination and self-doubt. Was she truly prepared to meet her father's demands? The agreement hung over her like a cloud, tantalizingly electric, yet daunting. She knew she needed to make a plan, to solidify her path ahead. The idea of merging her passion and her profession crackled with excitement, but the nagging fear of failure clawed at her resolve. Sarah found herself pacing the clinic, caught in the spiraling thoughts of Toto's. How would she validate her worth? Her first task was to reach out to the local animal shelter, one that had always welcomed her enthusiasm, and propose a community outreach program. This would not only utilize her skills but also establish connections within the community. She envisioned workshops where families could learn about animal care and the importance of empathy towards living beings. Sitting at her desk, she scribbled notes in a hasty scrawl. As she penned down ideas, the words felt like an escape route from her father's expectations. This was an act of rebellion, but also an act of self-affirmation. Could this outreach program breathe life into her vision? Could it show her father that her approach had tangible benefits? The thought fueled her fingers, urging her to write faster. Yet, the doubts lurked ominously. Would anyone embrace her enthusiasm? Would her father dismiss her efforts as trivial yet again? She hesitated, her pen hovering above the paper. What if the community saw her passion as childish? How could she face her father after pouring her heart and soul into something that didn't produce immediate success? With a sudden surge of courage, she slammed the pad shut and pulled her phone out, scrolling through her contacts to find the animal shelter's number. Heart racing, she dialed, surprised at how swiftly instinct pushed her forward. It rang twice before a cheerful voice answered, and Sarah poured her heart into the conversation, feeling a tingle of hope spark within her. "Absolutely. We would love to partner with you," the shelter director said, enthusiasm evident in her tone. "Perhaps we could set up a meeting next week to brainstorm ideas. I think your insights could add so much to our programs." Elated yet apprehensive, Sarah felt the walls of doubt recede slightly. The director's warm reception was a confirmation that she was on the right path. Still, the specter of her father's critical eye loomed in the back of her mind. What if the meeting faltered? What if her plans flopped? As she hung up, she allowed herself a moment of exultation. The first step had been taken, however small. It was progress, and she realized that taking risks was inherently tangled with the potential for disappointment, a prospect she had long avoided. She looked down at the kitten again, its tiny form a mirror of her aspiration. The world was unpredictable, but it was also full of possibilities waiting to be seized. She understood now that failure wasn't merely a fall, it was a foundational stone for learning and growth. This newfound perspective was invigorating, and the swell of hope fueled her ambitions further. The day passed quickly as she drafted emails and outlined plans, the hours collapsing into moments of clarity. Progress was being made, yet beneath her burgeoning hope was a relentless current of trepidation. What if she couldn't meet the expectations set upon her, both by herself and her father? As the day turned to evening, Sarah felt a sense of accomplishment, but also an undeniable weight of pressure. She needed something to show for her commitment before she met with her father again. Apprehension wove itself into her fabric of resolve. The following day she headed to the personal microfarm of her childhood friend Lucas to retrieve supplies for her outreach workshop. He had always shared her love for animals and understood the intricacies of hardware management. Perhaps he could assist her in launching her project, offering not just moral support but practical assistance too. When she arrived, Lucas stood surprised as she pitched her ideas. His initial skepticism faded, replaced by curiosity and willing engagement. "I want to help," he said, "but you'll need more than just passion, fewer emotions and more strategy." His words, while well-intentioned, struck a nerve. Did he doubt her? That doubt flickered like a warning sign, yet she pushed it down. Instead of battling it, she resolved to transform it into motivation, channeling the voice of uncertainty into clarity of purpose. Together, they brainstormed logistics, integrating both passion and practicality, fusing everything she wanted to create into a feasible program. As they sketched out what the workshops could look like, A sense of excitement surged within her. It felt more real now. However, as they finalized their plans, a haunting thought persisted. Would her efforts win her father's respect and validate her ambition? The conversation soon shifted to potential challenges they might face, drawing even more attention to her creeping worries. Lucas's perspective was valuable, yet her heart murmured with the reminder she had to stay true to herself and her vision, despite external pressures. As she wrestled with doubts, she realized she was no longer just a daughter seeking her father's approval. She was an emerging professional willing to stand firm on her own ideals. In this moment, resolve began to congeal into resilience. She now understood that each hesitation encountered might be the catalyst for deeper exploration into her convictions. The next hurdle loomed. She was due to present these plans to her father soon. What would his response be? Would he see the value in her decision-making, or again filter it through his realism? And yet, as she prepared to express her voice amid the weight of expectations, she felt emboldened. For the first time, she sensed the gap between them as a bridge, one she could cross with confidence. Would she find clarity in this confrontation? And could she transform their relationship into one built on mutual respect instead of discord? As the boundaries blurred between fear and ambition, she realized that the upcoming meeting was less about validation and more about authenticity. As Sarah gathered her materials, a fresh determination surged within her. Perhaps the time had indeed come to face her father head-on and claim the narrative of her own life. But with each passing moment, the stakes intensified. How far was she willing to go for her convictions? In this daunting yet exhilarating endeavor, one question lingered. Would she emerge reshaped and victorious? Or would her father's shadow loom larger, threatening to extinguish her flickering flame? Only the truth of their confrontation held the answers. The morning sun spilled through the clinic's windows, illuminating the cluttered desks and tools that once felt overwhelming, but now served as reminders of Sarah's growing resolve. Today was the day she would face her father, a confrontation that had been brewing in her mind for weeks. She stood in front of the mirror, smoothing down her white lab coat, a subtle armor against the weight of expectation she felt pressing into her back. Yet she was no longer that hesitant girl uncertain of her path. She was ready to reclaim her narrative. As Sarah walked into the clinic, the familiar sounds of low barks and soft mews filled her ears, enveloping her in a sense of purpose. She cradled the kitten in her hands closer to her chest as if it could siphon off some of her mounting anxiety. Today would be different. She intended to plant her feet firmly on the ground and communicate not just her plans, but her passion. Clenching a folder filled with sketches and outlines, she mentally rehearsed both the introduction of her community outreach program and the emotional pitch that accompanied it, how it would help animals, educate families, and foster compassion in a world that often felt detached. Each point was a pillar, supporting not just her argument, but her very identity. Upon entering the consulting room, she found her father seated, his brow creased with concentration as he reviewed paperwork. The sharp lines of his suit contrasted sharply against the homely environment. He looked up and offered a curt nod, a subtle indication that he was both present and absorbed in thought. Two worlds that often collided. "Dad," she started, her voice steady yet buoyed by a current of adrenaline. "I wanted to talk to you about something important." She gestured toward the folder, and his gaze flickered briefly toward it, then back to her, a silent beckon for her to elaborate. Swallowing hard, she forged ahead. "I've been working on a community outreach program that I believe can really make a difference for both our clinic and the local shelter." As she spoke, the words cascaded out of her, fueled by urgency and passion. He listened, yet his expression was inscrutable, neither encouraging nor dismissive. "And you believe this will win people over?" he asked, a sharp edge to his tone. "You think a few workshops will enhance our credibility? Make this clinic what it needs to be?" Fire ignited within her, and Sarah steadied herself against the unyielding walls of doubt pressing in on her. Instead of shrinking back, she pressed forward, her conviction fierce. "It's not just about credibility. It's about connection, Dad. This outreach can create awareness and compassion for animals that go overlooked. It can change lives." As she laid out her plans, She saw flickers of defensiveness in his demeanor. Perhaps memories of her own youth, perhaps echoes of his own unrelenting expectations. "You need to understand," he replied, his voice steadying, "that passion alone doesn't equate to success. To make a difference, you have to blend emotion with strategic planning. What will your metrics of success look like?" His words were sharp, but beneath them lay an unspoken challenge, an invitation to refine her ambitions into something concrete. A deeper understanding of the industry was necessary, but where to draw that line? Could she mesh her heartfelt vision with a practical outlook? Was it possible? Pushing aside the sinking feeling of inadequacy, another realization surged within her. Failure was not a shackle, it was a stepping stone. "I plan to measure engagement and outcomes," she argued, her voice gaining momentum. "This program isn't just about what I want, but creating a lasting impact. I have initial ideas, and I'm open to feedback. This isn't a solo venture." As they continued to debate the intricacies of her outreach program, a new determination crystallized within Sarah. This dialogue was not just a chance to win her father's approval. It was an opportunity to redefine their relationship, a shift from critique to collaboration, from disconnection to understanding. Yet a more profound question began to gnaw at her willingness to forge ahead. What if she proposed a collaborative project, involving her father's expertise while keeping her vision intact? Could this bridge the generational gap that had always shrouded their interactions? Would they finally break through the rigid expectations of the past? As the meeting began to wind down, Sarah felt both exhilarated and exposed. What if this confrontation reshaped not just her dreams, but their entire dynamic? The stakes had never felt higher, and her heart raced with anticipation and fear at the prospect of vulnerability. "Let's gather data," her father suggested, a slight thaw in his rigidity. "Evaluate how this could work and how it might operate in conjunction with our existing practices." A glimmer of hope ignited within Sarah as they laid the foundations for a dialogue based on respect and shared objectives. Could this be the turning point she had long desired? Would the future hold an authentic partnership forged through collaboration rather than critique? With each word exchanged, the air thickened around them as they stood at the brink of something profound. As she walked out of the clinic, a swell of possibilities danced through her mind. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, it felt navigable. What would their next steps look like? Could she integrate her passion seamlessly into their shared ambition? Only time would reveal if this bold new strategy could become the cornerstone of both her profession and her father's legacy. Back at her apartment, Sarah's mind energized with visions of the future, each thought spinning and evolving into a roadmap of potential. The adrenaline from the meeting kept coursing through her, sharpening her focus. She'd entered that room hoping to convince her father, but she realized she had just as much to prove to herself. This was her moment to rewrite the narrative, not just of her professional life, but also of her relationship with her father. Her desk lay strewn with research notes and references on outreach programs, engagement metrics, and community involvement. The data seemed to shimmer in the afternoon light, beckoning her to sift through it. With her father's analytical perspective echoing in her mind, she palmed a stack of papers and began to organize her thoughts. What metrics would truly reflect the program's impact? How could she quantify compassion and engagement in measurable terms? She dove into the labyrinth of resources, her fingers battling the flood of anxiety that surfaced with every potential obstacle her father's questions had conjured. Each statistic and case study she reviewed added another layer, pushing her confidence higher. A burgeoning sensation of empowerment unfolded. She was uncovering her own expertise. Hours slipped away, the shadows lengthening across the room as she compiled a clearer vision, aligning her heart with a practical framework. While she was still passionate about connection and compassion, she needed to express it in terms her father would understand. She strategically jotted down metrics such as participant numbers, feedback scores, and partnership developments. A sudden craving for feedback surged through her. Why not consult someone who had navigated the waters of both passion and practicality? Without hesitating, she dialed Morgan, her mentor from veterinary school. The conversation swiftly shifted from pleasantries to the urgency of her outreach program. I want to create a community program that connects families with animals needing homes, Sarah explained, her voice peppered with excitement. But my father's concerns about metrics have me questioning everything. That's a good sign, Sarah, Morgan countered, a knowing lilt in her tone. Your willingness to engage with criticism is a strength. But remember, your passion doesn't dissipate just because you stitch in some rigor. In fact, it can amplify it. As they brainstormed various metrics and engagement strategies, Sarah felt the weight of self-doubt begin to lift. Morgan's insights signified a blend of heart and analytical prowess. This could become a guiding principle for Sarah, balancing emotion with concrete benchmarks. The conversation pressed her to envision beyond the metrics, to understand the emotional success of her initiative. Create a checklist, Morgan suggested. What does success look like for you? A certain number of adoptions? Community members educated? Then, break those down into smaller milestones. Inspired, Sarah quickly jotted down her ideas, simple yet profound goals that resonated with her vision of connection, fostering compassion, increasing adoption rates, and building a supportive network for pet owners. As the call ended, she felt a warm ember of resolve begin to ignite. That wasn't just feedback, it was validation. She envisioned a duality in her project that allowed compassion to live alongside measurable success. The next day, Sarah entered the clinic energized, clutching a crisp folder full of data, sketches, and Morgan's checklist. As she stood before her father once again, the nerves that had once gripped her now transformed into a steadfast sense of purpose. Dad, I've refined my proposal, she said, her voice unwavering. Let's specifically discuss how to measure success alongside our shared values. I think I've found a way to bridge my passion with the strategic vision you've been pushing me toward. His brow lifted with curiosity, the faint lines of doubt beginning to soften. But just as she prepared to lay out her ideas and show him the newfound clarity in her vision, the door swung open. One of the clinic volunteers stumbled in, breathless, clutching a tiny crate. Dr. Sullivan, you need to see this. There's been an emergency rescue. She froze, heart thrumming in her chest. What lay ahead was packed with urgency, and she could sense another challenge testing her resolve. Would this incident once again reshape her path, revealing more than just her readiness for professional responsibility? As her eyes met her father's, they shared that unspoken acknowledgement. This moment could demand not just her expertise but her humanity, testing everything she had committed to in their growing collaboration. Would she rise to the occasion, or let fear dictate her response? The urgency of the moment was palpable, and as Sarah took a step toward the unknown, she could feel the stakes rising around her. What awaited inside that crate might be a pivotal test, leading her to develop not only as a professional, but challenging her very beliefs on compassion and responsibility in ways she never imagined. The breathless urgency that filled the clinic was stifling. Sarah couldn't tear her eyes away from the crate, where a small figure shifted restlessly within, blinking up at her with wide, fearful eyes. A kitten. She moved instinctively, her hands shaking slightly as she crouched down, feeling the compact size of the crate against her knees. What happened? She demanded, pulling her gaze from the tiny creature back to the volunteer, whose expression was a mix of excitement and distress. There was a mother cat. She was found with a badly injured kitten. We need your help, Dr. Sullivan. The mother is frantic and we don't know how long the kitten survived without her. The words rang in Sarah's ears like a tolling bell. The weight of responsibility crashed onto her as the moment transformed from the theoretical to the tangible. Was she truly ready for this? Could she balance the metrics her father sought with the compassion this situation demanded? Her heart raced. Let's take a look, she urged, pushing through her hesitation. The little kitten in the crate was her immediate priority, its frail mule clawing at her heart. It had been so long since she dealt directly with such an emergency. She had shifted primarily to administrative tasks. But stepping back into a clinical role ignited an old passion, one she thought was buried under piles of paperwork and proposals. As she opened the crate, the warmth that emanated from the small body filled her with a sense of urgency tinged with hope. The kitten looked thinner than she remembered, needing care and attention that only she could provide. With practiced hands, she carefully lifted the tiny creature, feeling the fragile heartbeat against her palm. "Let's take this to the treatment room," she instructed, finding her focus like a lighthouse cutting through fog. The fear that had threatened to paralyze her shifted to determination. She rushed into action, her knowledge ignited as though a fire had been lit within her. As they entered the treatment room, she quickly assessed the kitten's condition. It was lethargic, signs of dehydration apparent, but its tiny chest still rose and fell with fragile life. "We need fluids and a warm incubator. I'll prep the IV," she called over her shoulder. The clinic buzzed with activity, yet within her, a storm raged. Would this moment reflect her growth, not just in practice, but as a daughter fighting to prove herself worthy of her father's vision? The siren call of compassion was clashing against the concrete metrics she had painstakingly gathered for her program proposal. She knew she had to find a balance, a harmony where her emotions would not diminish her professionalism, but enhance it. "But what if I fail?" A whisper of doubt crept in, uninvited. She visualized her father's scrutinizing gaze, the pressure of his expectations looming like a shadow. As the kitten settled into the incubator, the temperature rising to a comfortable warmth, she felt a surge of righteousness coursing through her veins. This was why she wanted to create the outreach program, to connect eager adopters with animals like this one, reliant on kindness and compassion. She glanced once more at the tiny creature, a potent reminder that statistics represented lives, not mere numbers. Sensing her father's presence at the door, she turned, her determination morphing into resolve. This was not simply a test of skill. It was about commitment to her values. "Dad, I know we can measure success in big data and feedback scores, but real success lies in our ability to save lives, to build connections. This is the reason we need to do what we do." He watched her for a moment, a flicker of pride mixed with surprise crossing his face. Could he see it too? The urgency of compassion entwined with the fundamentals of her professional practice. As she worked, she felt a new sense of clarity forming, the boundaries of her project expanding in her mind. Each moment spent caring for the kitten was shaping her vision, a vision that might weather her father's analytical scrutiny while radiating the emotional core she so deeply valued. But just as she began to think she had carved a dual path forward, the emergency phone rang, shattering the moment. Another rescue? The urgency left her heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. The myriad challenges still lay ahead, demanding both her heart and data-driven mind. Could she manage the weight of each life entrusted to her, while still navigating her pursuit for professional legitimacy? As she answered the call, uncertainty loomed ahead, each word on the line leading her into the depths of her evolving journey. The sound of the emergency phone ringing echoed through the treatment room, reverberating in Sarah's ears as she steadied herself. She inhaled deeply, forcing her heart rate to slow while her mind raced. This call would demand quick thinking, clarity, and perhaps most importantly, courage. "Dr. Sullivan," the voice on the other end was frantic. "We have an emergency at the shelter. It's a mother cat. She's in shock and fighting to keep her kitten alive. We need you right away." Her stomach twisted with a cocktail of fear and adrenaline. This was her moment. The dual responsibilities of caring for two lives tethered to her own uncertain journey were colliding, testing her resolve. She glanced at the incubator where the kitten rested, fragile and vulnerable. "I'm on my way," she replied, her voice steady despite the tempest within. Leaving the treatment room, Sarah felt the tension in her chest tighten, a reminder of the stakes she were facing. The emotional toll of her responsibilities weighed heavily, yet it did not deter her from stepping toward the challenge ahead. Commitment to care had birthed a fierce determination she couldn't ignore, awakening instincts that had lain dormant beneath layers of administrative responsibility. At the shelter, chaos greeted her. Volunteers hovered around a side room, murmuring anxiously. Sarah's heart sank at the sight of the distressed mother cat, fur matted and trembling. She approached cautiously, knowing that a recent trauma could make any creature unpredictable. "Let me have a look," Sarah said, her voice calm yet firm. As she knelt beside the mother cat, she could see the raw fear in the animal's eyes. Her heart broke at the sight of how desperately the cat wanted to reach her kitten, who lay in a box across the room. Sarah felt a tug in her chest. Could this mother's instinct for her young mirror her own struggles as a daughter seeking validation? The moment crystallized in her mind. This wasn't merely about saving animals. It was about understanding the depths of dependency and the fear of loss, especially in an environment where so many lives were at stake. She needed to be both the healer and the advocate. "Someone get a warm towel," she called out, taking charge. "We'll need to stabilize her before we move her to the treatment area." As the volunteers scrambled to gather supplies, Sarah considered how similar this situation was to her professional journey. How could she use her knowledge of metrics and outreach to amplify the voices of those like the mother cat, to advocate for their stories and needs? Once the mother cat was securely wrapped, Sarah cradled her gently, feeling the warmth against her chest. The bond between parent and offspring was palpable, resonating with her own aspirations of creating a meaningful outreach program. This realization unfolded as she moved swiftly toward the treatment room. The implications of her project were extending beyond mere logistics. They could foster empathy, bolster the emotional connections that drove people to act. Once inside, Sarah set to work, directing the volunteers with newfound confidence. "Check her vitals. We need to stabilize both her and the kitten," she said, her voice clearer now, assertive. Each calculated move reinforced her emerging identity, not just as a daughter of analytics but as a passionate veterinary professional. As she monitored the mother cat's condition, a wave of insights cascaded through her. She wasn't merely building a program, she was nurturing a vision, one that sought to bridge compassion and efficiency. It felt like she was finally becoming the veterinarian she always aspired to be, one who recognized that behind every statistic lay a heartbeat, a life worth saving. With the mother calmed and responding, she took a moment to breathe, a sense of purpose filling her. But just as her confidence began solidifying, she overheard the murmurs escalating into anxiety. An unfamiliar voice raised beyond the din. She glanced over and spotted a man entering the room, his expression etched with disbelief and frustration. "Where is my cat?" he demanded, eyes darting around the room, searching, but zeroing in on Sarah. Every instinct in her body heightened. This was not just an impending confrontation. It felt like a direct hit on the foundation of her principles. She had to confront the very forces that threatened her burgeoning confidence and force in this animal search and rescue. Here we go, Sarah thought, steeling herself. The time had come to face the unexpected challenge that had just barged into her life. Would she stand her ground when faced with an opponent who could undermine everything she had just begun to build? With the man's gaze piercing through the chaos, Sarah felt the weight of the moment coalesce around her. "What do you mean, where is my cat?" she articulated, forcing herself to align her voice with authority, rather than flinch under his scrutiny. The subtle reminder of the stakes was present. Emotions ran high in a setting meant to heal, yet here was someone ready to explode. "There's a mother cat out there somewhere, and she was taken in for treatment," he tallied, frustration mounting. "Didn't anyone inform me?" A sharp pang resonated in Sarah's gut. This man was desperate, not just for his animal, but for reassurance, for answers. Rather than dismiss him, she leaned into her training and honed in on empathy as the core of her response. "We've just stabilized her," she shared, stepping closer, meeting his gaze firmly. "We're going to provide care for her and her kitten. Your cat is safe." He hesitated, uncertainty flickering across his features before slowly dissipating. "Safe," he echoed, almost absorbed by the word. "Yes, you were right to be concerned. She needs all the support we can give her," Sarah affirmed, grounding herself in her role not only as a caretaker, but as the bridge between the emotional needs of this man and the well-being of both the mother and her fragile kitten. As Sarah pivoted back toward the treatment room, she felt the echo of her earlier determination echo in the corners of her mind. This was precisely why she wanted to build her outreach program. Each interaction offered a chance to cultivate compassion, an opportunity to create a ripple effect that would echo in the lives of both animals and people alike, transforming not only her career but also her father's perception of what success truly represented. With the mother cat now steady and the volunteers tending to her with care, Sarah took a moment to share pertinent updates on their progress and engage in dialogue with the man regarding the treatment process. I understand your fears. It's completely natural to feel anxious in these situations. I want you to know we're doing our utmost to help her and allow you both to be reunited soon. She observed how the tension in his shoulders began to shift, as if he were acknowledging her sincerity. In that instance, it became clear to Sarah. This was the essence of her veterinarian calling. Healing had layers, connecting the dots between the medical and emotional, formalizing her intuitive understanding of compassion as foundational to her practice. While your cat is here, you could be part of the healing process, she added, her tone inviting yet grounded. If you're comfortable, we can arrange for you to stay close by so you can be updated frequently. The more support we can give her, the better she'll respond. You being there for her can ensure her comfort and reduce her stress. The man nodded, visibly reassured, the lines of tension slowly easing away from his face. I'll do anything. I just want to make sure she's okay. This stake displayed a clearer understanding of the fragile relationship between fear and care. As he engaged with the medical staff, Sarah turned back toward the newly arrived Kitten, a tangible reminder of the emotional fabric she was striving to weave into her career. She realized not only was this about saving lives, it was about teaching compassion and building connections within the community. The flames of her aspirations, once flickering passionately but uncertain, now burned brightly with promise. As the chaos surrounding her banded together, she knew her community outreach program could serve as a channel to educate and enlighten others about the importance of compassion. When her father arrived, she gathered strength from the interconnectedness of her experiences. An understanding had blossomed within her that sparked resilience. There was a balance to be struck between hard data and the emotional layers deep in every life she touched, which would prove critical in her journey ahead. "Dad," she blurted amidst the bustle, her voice cutting through the noise. "Can we talk about the outreach program now? These lives matter beyond what we can measure. If we don't advocate for their care and explore how to engage our community in their healing, we lose ourselves in numbers alone." Surprised, he turned to her, processing her words alongside the unfolding scene. In that instant, she felt the distance they had navigated begin to soften as her passion shone through the professionalism she cultivated. "We can further expand on the vision," he conceded slowly, eyeing the Kitten with newfound determination. "But we will make these points measurable so we can see the impact." "Exactly," she agreed, energized by the hope of collaboration. "Let's create a program that builds on metrics while fostering a community that empathizes and connects. There's potential here that can bring healing to more than just the animals. It will reach the heart of the community." The mother and Kitten represented more than the sum of their parts. They were symbols of how love, connection, and shared purpose could encompass all aspects of their intertwined journeys. Standing firm in her newfound resolve, Sarah felt the contours of her identity expand, evolving from a girl haunted by expectations into a push forward, demonstrating that personal fulfillment would define the professional legacy she sought to create. As the day unfolded around her, wrapped in a flurry of tasks and emotional resolve, Sarah understood deeply. To thrive, she must balance professionalism with humanity. The Kitten's soft purr filled the room, embodiment of triumph, uniting hope and perseverance in her aspirations out into the world. Finally, she stepped outside to the vibrant autumn space, a swirl of courage and ambition filling her veins as she took her first step toward creating a program that resonated with her vision, ready to embrace her evolution as both a veterinary professional and a compassionate caregiver. "Prepare for the journey ahead, Sarah," she whispered to herself. "It's time to create the change you wish to see." This was her moment, one of action, one of purpose, and one of undeniable commitment to a life centered around care, compassion, and the profound narratives woven through every being they sought to uplift. Make the world a better place, one heartbeat at a time. Now it's time for you to step forward. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire real change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these incredible journeys visible for everyone searching for hope. Comment below with your reactions and thoughts about this powerful conclusion, because we want to hear your voice. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this fulfilling story. Only true fans of personal overcoming narratives understand the urgency of uplifting others through inspiration.